Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why at each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back. I have got another new friend, and this one is right in my backyard. Got a New Jersey friend here, so this is great. So before I jump ahead like I usually do, I'm going to say welcome. We are so glad to have you, Christine. Why don't you tell us about who you are, where you're at, and what you do?
Hi, I'm Christine Szeluga. I am the high school librarian at Cranford High School in Cranford, New Jersey.
And you are also I believe, a multi-award winning school librarian.
I am, yes. I just won, and I'm so honored that ALA I Love My Librarian Award.
That is so awesome.
It is so amazing. I never thought that I would get this award. And last year I won the Miss Honey Award through the AASL. So that was also equally humbling and an amazing honor.
So awesome. And so I think we're going to be talking a little bit about how you got to that Miss Honey Award a little bit later. So how did you end up in school librarianship in the first place?
So it was a very roundabout way. I actually started working in museums, and I was a museum educator at the South Street Seaport Museum part-time, and Sailor Snug Harbor, which became the Snug Harbor Cultural Center in Staten Island. And I also worked at the Children's Museum of Manhattan. So I was simultaneously working in those three museums part-time right out of college. And then I went to, so I was a museum educator. And then I went to be a museum type educator at the Brooklyn Public Library, working in their Brooklyn Connections program. And that was part-time also. While I was going for my master's in education. And then the program director, she wound up leaving for another job. She's now vice president at the New York Historical, and I took her position. And she's an amazing human being, and I was so happy to follow her footsteps. And while I was doing that, I was like, oh, I love libraries so much. And I was always sort of library adjacent in my various roles. And I was able to get a scholarship to go to library school at Syracuse University through their iSchool. And from there, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be a school librarian. While I was finishing up my degree, wound up leaving Brooklyn Public Library, and I worked at the Staten Island Museum because I lived in Staten Island at the time.
Okay.
This small little part of New York City that no one really talks about, or they just drive through.
Staten Island Ferry is pretty much my extent of my knowledge on
Staten
Island.
That's most people. Yeah. Or the Staten Island Dump, if you know the Staten Island from the 90s. So I did that for a little bit, and I interned in their library, which they have a very small but really robust library and archive. And then I had a baby. And
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I was like, I want to be a school librarian. This is definitely what I want to do. I started working in middle schools. I have to be honest, I loved working with middle schoolers.
Yeah.
But then we left New York and we moved to New Jersey because I had another baby.
Wow.
And yeah, this is all within a period of time, right? And then I got the job at Cranford, and I've been there for almost 8 years, and I'm incredibly happy there.
That's awesome, man. That is definitely a journey. Wow,
yeah,
I love that. Yeah. That's not usually. It's like, yeah, I was an ELA teacher, and then I went into library. Like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But you really took the journey there. That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of non-traditional education, which I completely believe in and support. And I think working in non-traditional education has helped me become a better librarian.
Absolutely. I think there's really sometimes there could be a disconnect between what goes on in schools and what goes on sort of in the wider world. And so when you've got that opportunity to sort of see how different things go and how they work and sort of bring that experience in, it's so invaluable for your students. I mean, they are fortunate to have you because that's a really great background for them to, for you to be able to draw on to help them. So that's awesome.
It's always funny whenever we do career day and I tell them my path to get here and how many degrees I have. And they're like, what? What is your past? I was like, oh, it all led to here.
Hey, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
We end up where we're supposed to be. We're going to talk about your Cranford Dixie Giants program that you did. And I've been reading some about it, and I'm just so interested and curious about, like, where did this even begin? Like, what was the origin point for this?
Well, I think a lot of it stems from my work at the Brooklyn Public Library and Brooklyn Connections, because that project and that program is still around. It's now through the Brooklyn Center for History, I believe it's called, which is the former Brooklyn Historical Society, which the Brooklyn Public Library sort of took over.
Okay.
So that program still exists. And the purpose of that program was to teach middle school and high school students predominantly how to do research using an archive, using a special collection. And the way we were able to get kids to care about libraries and to care about research and special collections and archives was to bring it to them to teach local history. So I've always been interested in local history. I have a degree in history. I think history is so incredibly important. If you don't know your history, you don't know where, all the cliche stuff, you don't know where you're going, right? But I particularly like local history. And I presented nationally on doing local history. You could do local history anywhere. I am from a very small town in Pennsylvania. It's called Dingman's Ferry. It's teeny, teeny, tiny. And you can do local history in a teeny, teeny, tiny town or something bigger like Brooklyn. So having that background, I wanted to do research about Cranford because Cranford actually has a really robust history. But this project started because I had to be observed, as all of us have to be observed. And my collaborating teacher, he was teaching a Sports America class. And I was like, oh my goodness, I am not a sports person. I respect it. I want to understand it, but I'm not a sports person. So I was like, how can I do a sports lesson using libraries? And I was like, well, there has to be a sports team we can research. I found out that baseball really has its foundation in New Jersey, in Hoboken. And I was like, where can I, right? Isn't that so cool? And then I was like, where can I go with that? And then digging a little deeper, I found out that Cranford had its own baseball team. It was kind of like, it was semi-professional, and it was a Black baseball team. And folks had not heard about it. Any person that I asked, especially like I went to our director of athletics, like, you ever heard of this team? I was like, no, I've never heard about it. So I decided we would research the Cranford Dixie Giants. And I just thought it was going to be a one-off. And this is right after the pandemic. We're using Pear Deck and we're using, jot form, and we're trying to do these really elaborate lessons using different platforms. And the kids were really, really interested. And that made me so excited.
Yeah.
And my supervisor, who was observing me, she goes, wow, I had no idea. Wouldn't it be cool if we can find out exactly where they played and get a plaque dedicated? And I was like, well, I don't know if we can do that, but let's see. So I contacted, even before I contacted the community, the kids delved really deep. We reached out to the Cranford Historical Society, the Cranford Public Library, and I had a little bit of stuff that we were able to research through Ancestry.com.
See, that's when you were talking about like local history, especially in the midst of like, we're starting to see a lot of pushback against tech and like sort of maybe a return to some of our print sources or, archive type materials. And when you said local history, I was like, of course, like there's someone somewhere in every small town that has that. Here's the things that have happened in the past. And so it's there waiting for us. And I love that you are bringing this and sort of saying like, yes, this is a thing that we should be absolutely taking advantage of, not just for ourselves, but like for our students too. That's so great.
Yeah. it turned into, again, a much larger project than I anticipated, but it's proof that it can happen anywhere. Cranford has, I don't know, like 20,000, a population of 20,000. It's not huge. But it could happen anywhere. The kids started doing research. The Ancestry Classroom grants really helped. Any public school can apply for this grant. It's absolutely free. And that gives you access to Ancestry.com, Fold3, and newspapers.com. So Fold3, if you don't know what that is, it's a military record database. So you can research people who were in the military, but you could also find draft cards and stuff like that. So that was really cool. So we used newspapers.com, and we were able to find all these newspaper articles about the Cranford Dixie Giants, that they were playing against Plainfield, which is a couple towns over, or playing against Scotch Plains. And so it was cool that the kids were able to find the stuff. And by the way, the Dixie Giants played in the 20s and 30s. So it was really great that the kids were able to find this. And then the historian from the Cranford Historical Society, who's a volunteer, he was able to pull a whole bunch of information. And then the Cranford Public Library, who we have a great relationship with, I'm on the board there. And it's like, hey, can you do me a favor and help out? And the librarian's like, yeah, absolutely. We have a little bit of information. So pulling all those resources together, the kids were able to create a story of these men who played in a segregated baseball team that was semi-professional in their hometown.
That is amazing. Wow. And like my brain is just making so many connections with how you can this can go in so many different ways. And like you were talking about, so 1920s, 1930s, what do we talk about in history that's going to connect with that? Talking about the storytelling element of it, like how do we tie in our ELA storytelling elements and nonfiction and memoir and biography? And like, there's just so many things you could do with this. Oh, boy.
And then there was even another element that manager of the Cranford Dixie Giants was closely connected to one of the founders of S&H Green Stamps, which is the creation sort of in our country of coupons. So it was amazing that we were able to talk about coupons, right? And we can bring in an economic element, and it is all related to Cranford. So the kids did this research, and I was able to get a grant that same year for a podcast studio. So they did some podcasting.
Nice.
I was also able to get a grant along with my supervisor for some video equipment. And we have an amazing teacher who taught kids how to use this camera equipment. And then they made a documentary about the Dixie Giants.
That's
Not only
awesome.
the history of the Dixie Giants, but also, and this is one of the things I'm so proud of working at Cranford High School, we still have a wood shop.
Nice.
And so we reached out to the woodshop teacher and said, do you have any kids that would maybe want to make a bench to commemorate these men? And so we worked with the podcast studio in my room. We worked with the Sports America teacher to do the research. We worked with the film teacher to create a documentary. We worked with the woodshop teacher to have a bench built. And then I was like, well, we're doing all this. Let me reach out to the mayor and see if we could have the land that I know there were no houses built on the land where the men played. I wonder if it's town owned. So I reached out to the mayor, and he did a survey. It was town owned. And he was like, yeah, let's have a whole dedication for these men, for this team, to celebrate the history of Cranford and the Dixie Giants. And now we have a permanent fixture of a bench and a plaque, all created by students and all researched by students. And it has a QR code that brings you to information about the Dixie Giants. And it is just, I don't know, I never thought this would happen.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that is just absolutely amazing that you were able to pull all these elements together. I'm curious, the podcast and the documentary, did you make those available to the public in some way, or?
So I'm happy to share it in this group of your listeners. It's interesting because at that time we didn't have a board policy for our documentary. We have a board policy now, but we didn't have an approved board policy for documentaries, so we didn't share it publicly.
Sure.
The documentaries, and because of we're concerned about privacy and our students' privacy.
Absolutely. That's but it's such a great, whether or not the public is able to see it, I'm sure that the students saw it. I'm sure that the school was able to enjoy it. And
yes,
I'm just imagining the sense of pride and ownership and agency that those students must have had to be able to show off this product that they had created, because I'm sure that it was an amazing product.
I mean, I am so proud of these kids, and I don't know how to build a bench. It's amazing that the kids did this. And then we were able to go even one step further. And I had a whole committee of students working on this ceremony that was televised by our local, it's called TV 35, our local TV station. And we were able to invite some of the family members, the living family members of some of the Dixie Giants players to come for the dedication, which was
awesome.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Boy, man, this is what education should be, is kids engaging with material and finding the things that grab them and learning how to use the skills to build their knowledge and build these amazing products that reflect not only what they have learned, but the interests and the passions that they have found in doing these things. Boy,
thanks.
It was amazing.
And it was
Absolutely
fun
amazing.
too.
Yeah. Well, and that too, and that's one of the things and I get it. Like, I was a classroom teacher for 20 something years, and there's so many pressures and curricula and accountability, and you have to do this, you have to do that, it has to be done by this time. And we have beaten so much of the joy of learning out of the learning process. And so that the students got to engage with this project. This is not the kind of thing that kids are just going to do because they're required to do it. Like, they clearly had a stake in this and a passion for this. So kudos to you and kudos to them. Amazing.
And I have to say, sometimes administrators don't get the credit, but they said yes.
Yes.
We don't always, I've worked in other schools and, you don't always get the yeses.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thankful for that too.
Absolutely. Man, awesome. Absolutely amazing. And the project itself, amazing.
Thank you.
I'm kind of curious about, you were saying that your local historical society and your local library were able to pull some materials.
Yes.
Were those, did that become sort of a traveling set of materials that came to your school? Did you guys go to them? How did that sort of work?
So the public library was able to digitize the resources for us and just share a folder of resources, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
The historical society, they didn't have that capacity. So a couple of the students went on their own time to the historical society and look through the files, which, I mean, how many high school students, there were mostly boys too, how many 17-year-old boys would go to a historical society and spend an evening with an archivist and go through all this information?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have really special kids, really amazing kids.
Yeah. And it's funny, I generally, I spent a little time in high school. I spent most of my career in middle school, but I'm pretty familiar with teenage boys. And when it comes to teenage boys in history, there's not a huge, that Venn diagram does not overlap a whole lot.
They love World War II.
Yes, exactly. But you found a way to kind of take sports and make sports into the focus for this project that is able to expand their view of not just sports, but their home and history in general. And so many ways, I'm sure that they were able to also sort of connect this and spin this out into other historical information that they have, building that foundational level of knowledge that they have in a way that they are able to, hopefully, and I imagine that they are kind of looking back on this project and saying, what else is out there? I didn't know this was out there, and now I know this is out there. So what else is out there? I feel like you've probably opened their eyes a bit to the possibilities.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And also public speaking. And we had to present our plan in front of the town committee. So we had to go to a town council meeting and we had to explain to the committee why we're doing it and what the relevance and and how important it is. And the students had to speak in front of, it can be a little intimidating speaking in front of the mayor and the rest of the town council, which I think is, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 people. It's intimidating.
Absolutely.
And they did it with flying, they're just amazing. Flying colors is what I was looking for.
And what a great little mini civics lesson too about like, here's how our town functions and here's what these people do.
Yes.
Like just so many elements that are making this. I mean, the phrase authentic learning sometimes gets tossed around a little too much, but this is, to my mind, just a great example of what authentic learning can and should look like. Just so wonderful.
Thank you. Again, it was a lot of fun, and now we're looking for the next thing. We're doing a research project about the Cranford Public Library because the library is doing an expansion for the children's wing, and because of it's not necessarily because of this project, but this project helped, and along with the Ancestry grant, we have a new class about genealogy, and the kids research their genealogy, but before they do their family history, we researched Cranford history. And so the group this year, they were researching the history of Cranford Public Library to help with the reopening or the rededication of the children's wing. And the Cranford Public Library had 3 incarnations, and the kids didn't know that. And so it was part of the Carnegie grant money. So it was really interesting. Like the kids were able to see that there's so much in our tiny, cute, like Pleasantville type town that they had no idea about. So every year I hope to do a research project like that where they can learn more about their town and learn more about the history and maybe have a sense of ownership.
Yeah, man. Well, so usually I will ask what kind of feedback you've gotten for this, but clearly you've gotten some very good feedback along the way on this. And not only have you gotten good feedback from the students in your school and your administrators and your township, but also this went a little bit bigger than that, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I am the 2025 Miss Honey Award recipient through the American Association of School Librarians. So that is an award that's given out every year to one person or one project that exhibits the sort of element of Miss Honey from Matilda with social justice, right? So it's the Social Justice Award. And I was floored when they said that I had won it and our school had won it, but also incredibly honored.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how did that come about? Because that's not so. I mean, it's not just something they wave a wand and.
No, yeah. So there is an application process, and I would recommend any librarian, if you're doing some social justice project, to absolutely apply for it. It was my clerk, actually. I'm very lucky librarian that I have a clerk in high school. I recognize that not everybody has an assistant or a clerk. I do, and I'm so thankful for her. Her name is Kathy, and she's the most amazing human.
Go Kathy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can't say more amazing things about her. And she said, there's this award. You should apply for it and see what happens. And I was like, I don't know. This is a tiny little town and it's a national award. I don't know. She's like, just go for it. So I was like, okay. I applied for it. I believe I needed a letter of recommendation and I needed proof that the project happened. So we had media, press releases and all that. And then I got it. And I'm so honored.
Amazing. So great. And I love that you did take that step because I think so often, especially, I think it's true in education generally, but I think especially in school librarianship, there's sort of it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day of everything. And you kind of lose sight of the bigger picture sometimes because you're the only person that's maybe doing it. Or maybe you've got a volunteer or an aide that's helping you out, but like you're kind of on your own. And there's not a lot of people to sort of get feedback from or like have those conversations with about, oh yeah, we did this great big thing. Like it's just like, yeah, we did it, but now I'm moving on to the next thing. And
right.
It's so easy to just lose track of the fact that like, yeah, we've done some cool stuff. Like we've done some amazing things, or our students have really taken stuff that we've started and run with it. And I mean, this is absolutely an amazing, amazing project. And it's so well deserving of this award. And I'm so glad that you put in for it because we had sort of briefly chatted before we started recording. Audience, I'm going to give you a little bit of behind the scenes here, but we were chatting just a little bit and you had mentioned the importance of kind of that advocacy and putting in for these kinds of awards because it is an advocacy element. And if you want to speak to that some more, I'm 100% in agreement with you.
Well, I think now more than ever that school librarians are their jobs are getting cut. We don't know, particularly in New Jersey, and it's happening all across the country, but particularly in New Jersey, healthcare costs are rising and cuts need to be made. And often school librarians are the first to go. I lived through 2008 when I saw in New York City a bunch of school librarians get cut. And we need to show to our superintendents, to our principals, to our supervisors, to our community how important we are. And we're not just a body. We're not just checking books out. We are a safe space for children to be. We help out the entire community. I explain to every freshman, I do freshman tours, that my number one job is to help every single student in the school. My secondary job is to help every single adult in the school.
Yes.
And we need to advocate for ourselves. And sometimes the only way to properly do that is to get out in the news, to get these awards, to write papers, to let people know what we do, because not no one, but very few people know what we actually do.
Too many people, their only knowledge of what a school library program might be is if they had one in their school, and not necessarily everybody did. So maybe their opinion is based on like movies and TV shows where it's always the shushing librarian and you're not supposed to be in the library at all.
Right.
Like even I love libraries. I have always loved books. I've always loved reading. I've always loved libraries. But like a friend of mine and I who went to high school together, neither one of us can remember who our school librarian was. Neither one of us spent any time in our school library. It was a place that you didn't want to go. It was not a friendly place. It was not an open place that you wanted to visit.
Right.
And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of people who have that experience and that's all they know about school libraries.
Right.
And they don't know the awesome, awesome stuff that like a good, strong school library program does. There's so many amazing people out there in school libraries doing so much amazing stuff. And it's
Absolutely.
just so heartrending to see schools losing these programs when especially we hear about like literacy crisis. We hear about our students aren't doing enough reading. And yet we're cutting the one thing that has been proven over and over and over again in research and in studies that actually is the one thing that improves student literacy by cutting school library programs. It's like, are you out of your minds?
Right. There's data, there's journal articles. We know this, yet we still continue to cut librarians. You cannot come into my school library at any point and there's no students. I am never alone. Like if I had one sort of complaint, I am never alone, but it's okay. I literally see hundreds and hundreds of kids every single day. And sometimes they're coming in for a comfortable spot, and that's okay. Sometimes they're coming in for the better Wi-Fi. That's fine. I do have really good Wi-Fi. Sometimes they're coming in to just sit with me. You know how the new thing is Velcro students? You know, that's all over social media. Do you have Velcro? I have probably 40 Velcro students. They just hang out at my desk all the time. And I'm like, you have to go to class. I help the new teachers with curriculum. I help the new teachers with, they want to teach this book. I'm like, maybe you should teach this book instead. I help the teachers who have been teaching for 20 or 30 years and teaching them how to use new technology, or maybe not so new technology, but it's new to them.
Even just providing them with the resources that they may not even realize are available,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do so much, and so much of it is sort of unchecked. And I think that is a fault of ours, and I hate to call us out. So that's why we need to apply for these grants and these projects and these awards, because we need to let the larger population know that we do a lot and we love what we do. And there are groups who genuinely love us. And I'm going to bring us into this next award that I won this year.
Absolutely.
And I won the 2026 I Love My Librarian Award.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I love what I do, and I love who I work for and I work with. And I know so many of us do. You know, it's interesting when I found out, I got a phone call. I was at the gym and they're like, I have a news for you. And there was like 12 or 1,300 applicants this year that applied for this award and 10 received it. And I feel like I'm honored and I'm so humbled and I'm so thankful, right? But I feel like my job now is to promote librarianship even more and to, you know, maybe you're a school librarian in Kansas or Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania, where I'm from. Apply for these awards because you are amazing and you deserve it. I don't think I'm a better librarian than anybody else. I just advocate for myself and I have colleagues who will advocate for me because I advocate for them. And I advocate for our students. And I know you all do it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even if you are not winning an award, the fact that you are applying for it or the fact that you're being nominated for it, the fact that people are writing letters for you for it, that right there is good evidence to have in your pocket when people start talking about, well, do we really need a school library program? Well, here's what these people had to say about it. Like, this is not me telling you, this is other people showing you this is a valuable program, like that what we're doing is important here. So
Right.
I know that it can feel, personally, I always feel a little bit like if somebody recognizes I write for Knowledge Quest and if somebody's like, oh, I saw one of your posts, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, I don't have anything special to say, but it doesn't, it's so easy to fall into that trap and not take that recognition and say, thank you, I appreciate that, and kind of use it, like you're saying, to move forward with the advocacy and move forward with the helping the people who don't know understand what a school library program should be, you know?
Absolutely.
So, sorry, I could go off on this. I could stand on this soapbox all day. So rather than do that, I'm gonna redirect a little bit. And I want to come back to Cranford Dixie Giants for a second. And I was just kind of curious. So what was the group of students that were working on this? Like what grade level are we talking about?
So it's 11th and 12th grade.
Okay.
So Sports America class is an elective. So we require 4 years of English in our school. So we have English 1, 2, and 3, but we don't have an English 4. So English 4 in our school turned into an elective, a whole catalog of electives.
Interesting.
We rotate the electives. We have a film elective. We have this year a mystery and suspense, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Next year, we're piloting a feminist literature class. And we have graphic novel. And then we also have Sports America. And we had a few others. So Sports America is predominantly, you know, it is cliche, but it's predominantly boys. So that was the other thing. I was like, oh, I'm going to get these boys interested in doing research. So it was 11th and 12th grade boys predominantly. But the other thing that is amazing as a librarian and anyone that's a high school librarian or middle school librarian or even elementary, you get to see these kids grow, right?
Yeah.
So by the time I see them as seniors, I've known them for 3 years and I have this relationship with them. And I can say like, hey, we're going to do research right now. And I know you might not want to do it, but I'm going to make it fun. And so it's having that relationship too with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And so if it's an elective, they're self-selecting in, so that kind of changes the population maybe a little bit that you might have from, say, like a standard English class where like you have to take the class. Did you have any considerations that you needed to work with for like ELL students or differentiation for ability levels?
Yeah, so we don't have a big ELL population in our community, but definitely we had to differentiate a little bit. Some kids did podcasting while others wrote a paper and that's fine. We did a lot of group work. We're huge advocates of group work. So they were mostly in groups of 3 or 4. They self-selected their groups. So some did the research, some did the writing, some did the podcasting. So we really were able to lean into their abilities as well.
I love that. And this project was sort of inside of the Sports America class, right?
Yes.
So they were producing a product that was going to be graded? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this was, I think it was a 2-week intensive research project through Sports America. And then the following year, using that research that the Sports America kids were able to find, that's when we went to the film 1 and Film 2 classes. And we were able to call some kids that were interested in doing their final project. And that's where the documentary came from.
Oh, I love that. Oh, man.
So that was also graded.
I don't really care about the grades. Like as an educator, I feel like we have focused too much on grading, but I love that this became like you started with the research project that then became the seed of another project in another class. And like, it's just sort of spreading out across the whole school and pulling in students, and like you're lighting this fire of interest in them and getting them engaged in the subject that they have chosen. They've chosen sports, they've chosen film, but then like giving them inquiry and, helping their research skills to build with the area that they're interested in. Like, it's just such a great combination that you've got going there. Oh, boy.
And I have to shout out my collaborating teachers, 2 English teachers and the woodshop teacher. I couldn't have done this by myself. I don't know how to teach kids how to make a documentary. I don't know how to use, machinery to build a bench. And my colleagues, again, I love them. They're amazing. They make going to work so fun. They were like, okay, let's do this.
It's also a great testament to what we can accomplish when we collaborate, because it's so easy to be siloed in our subjects or in our classrooms. But when we're open to, let's try a thing. And I don't know about this, but you do. And being able to, I know it's tough, especially for educators, to give up that control and to say, I'm not the expert, I don't know. But when we can roll with it, amazing results, absolutely amazing results. Oh, boy. I'm kind of curious. Did the students have any kind of feedback afterwards? Like, did you hear anything from them after they had worked on either one of these projects that kind of gave you a bellwether of where they were at?
Well, so one of the kids I was working on the documentary, he also built the bench, and he did that so he did it during his woodshop class, but it takes a really long time to build a bench, apparently. So he spent a lot of late nights at the school. And again, the administrators and the teachers willing to stay late to let this kid, his name is Daniel, by the way, build the bench was so amazing. But his one feedback was like, I think I bit off more than I could chew. Particularly, he was a senior and the itis really hit in. He was like, I'm going to college and I'm doing this. But they did an amazing job. And editing the documentary came down to the wire too, because we weren't able to have the ribbon cutting for the bench until the bench was done, and the bench was not done until June. So the kids, it becomes a time crunch. And especially when you're working with seniors, they all get accepted into college by May 1st. And they want to be done with high school. But the kids stayed. They stayed and they worked until this project was done. And that's testament to them as well.
Absolutely. Boy, amazing. Absolutely amazing. So this was the first time you had done a lesson sort of along these lines, yeah?
In Cranford High School, when I was working at Brooklyn Connections, Brooklyn Public Library, we did a lot of local history research. Yeah.
Gotcha. If there are people, and you're thinking that you're going to try and sort of maybe reconfigure this a little bit or find a new focus and continue this in the future.
Yeah. So Cranford at one point had a lot of multimillionaires that they were living in Cranford, but commuting to Manhattan. And I want to find out really who those multimillionaires were. And I want to know what projects they had. And I think the kids would really like to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I imagine that people listening to this are going to absolutely want to start playing with this. Do you have any suggestions or things that they might want to start with if they're, going into this cold, knowing that most of them probably are not coming from a museum background, so they may not quite have that same depth of experience?
Yeah, I think some people are going to say, "Oh, I just live in a small town and there's nothing for me." I would recommend looking around your small town. Again, I'm from Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania. People have never heard of that, I'm sure. It's off the Delaware Water Gap. I was able to do a local history research project about Child's Park, which is our tiny park, but there was so much information there. There's stuff, there's plaques. You might have a historical society. Maybe they're only open once a month, but reach out to them, knock on their door the one day that they're open. Reach out to your public library. Start with ancestry.com and type in your town, type in street. Maybe you have a main street. There's something that happened everywhere. My grandmother had a plaque up in her house, and she lived in Branchville, New Jersey, which is a teeny, teeny, tiny town in New Jersey. And it said, on this day in 1786, nothing happened, or something like that. And I'm like, I bet you something happened. I'm sure something happened. Maybe on this place, on this day, whatever. But I'm sure something happened. Mm-hmm. So ask your neighbors. Find the person in your town that's lived there for 50, 60, 70 years. Talk to them. This all happens with talking and reaching out and maybe even a Google search. I don't know. But I guarantee you something happened, or maybe someone lived there that was of importance. And I guarantee you can find something.
Absolutely, man. And also a great opportunity to make those connections with your community that you might not otherwise do, because if you are reaching out to your local library, to your historical society, to just people in the community, what a great way to sort of help them see what a school library can do beyond serving books to kids. Like, you are reaching out and trying to create an educational experience and learn about the place. And I think the people we might get in touch with would really value and appreciate the fact that the school library is trying to do this thing. And so, I don't try and turn everything into advocacy, but there's so much that just the things that we do are so much advocacy, and we don't often realize it. And so even just having those conversations might be a very valuable brick in your wall of why we need to keep the school library around. So
absolutely.
I keep going back to that. We're gonna move away from it. So I think we are actually at the point where we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Sweetie.
Yeah.
So any kind of book you want to share, what do you want to get on people's reading radar?
Sure. So there's a couple, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm on a real Kristen Hanna kick. I know she's been talked about so many times. I recently read, and I don't know why it took me so long, The Nightingale. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still crying about it. I'm still crying every day about it. I'm also currently reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Oh my gosh, what an amazing book. Again, not sure why it took me so long. But if I could recommend two local to me authors, one is Rob Hart. He is, I want to pull up the exact title of the book because it is so good. He is a Staten Island author, and I love Staten Island. That's where I grew up. But he wrote The Warehouse. And I cannot say more amazing things about this book. It's essentially if Amazon took over and there are no other jobs except for this Amazon type organization. And there is a bit of a love triangle in there because you need a little bit of love. But it ends in such a mind-blowing way where it is so incredibly dystopian, but it's becoming more and more real. I think he wrote it in 2017 or something like that. I would highly recommend Rob Hart. I think he's great. He writes a lot of mystery and suspense.
Okay.
And then if I can tout my husband a little bit.
I did not realize you had an author in the family.
I do. My husband, John Szeluga, he's written two books. One is a fantasy football punishment book. So he is not a fantasy football person, but he is a writer for Impractical Jokers. So this is an Impractical Jokers type book.
Gotcha.
So he wrote it along with the other writers of the Jokers. So I also want to tout my husband's book that he wrote along with his co-writer, Christopher Sorrentino. It's called Nerdy, Dirty, and Tasteless Star Wars Jokes. So it is exactly what it sounds like. But if you are a Star Wars fan and you miss the 80s joke book, the pocket joke books, this is perfect. This is perfect for you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I love it. Man, I used to have tons of those joke books, so I'm going to have to check this out and see what we got. Man, this is great. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all of these amazing details and just the positivity of everything you've had to share with us, not just the lesson, but the idea that we need to kind of be our own cheerleaders and that's okay, that we don't have to feel bad about cheerleading and that it's important even. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for sharing these great titles. I know people are going to want to try and touch base with you online. Where should they go looking for you?
So I don't have a big social media presence. During COVID, I was a bit of an influencer. I was a mom talk and library talk influencer. Me and Michael Threets, we would go back and forth. But my students started finding me and I found that a little weird. But you can definitely find me on LinkedIn under Christine Szeluga. Or if you want to follow my school page, it's called, I'm the worst with social media ever since quitting being a mom talker. It's called Cranford High Library. So you can kind of see all the projects that we're doing at the library.
And that's where we kind of cross paths. And I'm so glad that we did, because you're showing off so much good stuff there. And I really, truly thank you for taking the time to come and share this, and just everything that you have done. I thank you for, because you're doing some really great stuff. And I'm sure your students realize it. I'm sure your administrators realize it. I'm glad that other people are going to get to realize it too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.